Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds on the architecture of change. We're looking at what might be the ultimate practical framework for building consistency. James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Yeah, that's right. We're aiming to move past this sort of myth that you can just willpower your way through everything.
Exactly. It's about designing systems, behavioral systems, that make consistency almost, well, unavoidable, making those good habits the path of least resistance.
And that's the critical shift, isn't it? Our goal here is to blend Clear's really actionable steps, those 4 laws of behavior change, with the deeper psychological reasons why they work.
So you get the how and the why.
Precisely. We're giving you the blueprint, yes, but also the science behind it. And this stuff is rooted in, decades of research on conditioning, motivation, how our brains process things, understanding how and why these habits actually stick.
Okay, so we're breaking it down systematically. We'll explore these core principles. First, make it obvious.
Then make it attractive.
Third, make it easy.
And finally, make it satisfying.
Right. So this deep dive is really designed to equip you, the listener, with both the intellectual backing and the practical steps, the mechanics for building your own sort of personal operating system for growth, long-term growth. Okay, let's dive in. Part 1. We need to set the stage first, tackle this fundamental idea that motivation, well, it's kind of overrated. Clear argues the environment, the system you build, matters way more than just feeling up for it at any given moment. Why is relying on being pumped up such a flawed strategy?
Well, it's because our intrinsic drive, what really makes us tick, it's way more complex than we usually think, and it's surprisingly easy to sabotage.
Sabotage. How so?
If you look back at motivation theory, Daniel Pink synthesizes a lot of this, pointing to Harry Harlow's work back in the 40s, really radical experiments with rhesus monkeys.
The puzzle experiment.
Exactly. Harlow gave these monkeys some pretty complex mechanical puzzles, and the shocking thing was...
They just did them. For fun. Right. No reward needed.
Precisely. They solved them, seemingly just for the sake of solving them, for the enjoyment of the task itself. Harlow called this a third drive intrinsic motivation. The reward came from mastering the puzzle, from that feeling of competence and curiosity.
Okay, so that's the baseline. Intrinsic motivation works.
It does. But here's where it gets really interesting for habit building. Harlow then introduced an extrinsic reward. He started giving them raisins for solving the puzzles.
And you'd think that would make them work harder, faster.
That's the common sense assumption, yeah. But the opposite happened. Their performance suffered dramatically.
Wait, really? Getting paid in raisins made them worse.
Yeah. Pink highlights this. They actually made more errors. They solved the puzzles less frequently. It's a huge lesson for habit formation.
Wow.
External rewards, especially when you tie them to tasks that maybe should be intrinsically satisfying. Think writing, learning an instrument, exercise, creative work.
Things you might do for the love of it.
Right. Those external rewards can actually snuff out that initial spark. They can diminish performance, crush creativity.
Encourage shortcuts, maybe? Just to get the raisin.
Definitely. And crucially, it fosters short-term thinking. You're just focused on getting the reward now, not on the long-term value or enjoyment of the activity itself. So if you're building a system for consistency...
You need the fuel to come from the task itself, or the system, not just these fleeting external boosts.
Exactly. Relying on that momentary spike in motivation or some external reward, it's just too fragile.
Okay, so if motivation and external rewards are shaky ground, the system needs deeper roots. It needs to connect to something more fundamental, like our identity, our beliefs, which brings us to mindset.
Absolutely. We have to talk about the underlying beliefs we hold about ourselves. Carol Dweck's work here is just foundational. She basically splits people into 2 camps regarding how they see themselves.
The fixed mindset and the growth mindset.
Right. The fixed mindset is the belief that core parts of who you are, your intelligence, your talents, even your capacity for discipline, are essentially set in stone. They can't really be changed in any fundamental way.
And if you believe that, then any setback, any missed habit,
it becomes evidence of that fixed limitation. Failure feels definitive. It says something about who you are permanently.
Ouch. That sounds like a recipe for giving up.
It often is.
Yeah.
But the growth mindset operates differently. It's the belief that, basic things about the kind of person you are can be changed. They can be improved through effort, through learning, through building better systems.
So failure isn't a judgment on your identity.
Not at all. It's just data. It's feedback. It's a necessary part of the process, which is seen as ongoing and malleable. How you relate to struggle, to those inevitable bumps in the road, really defines how you react when your habit system, occasionally breaks down.
And this connects to optimism too, doesn't it? Martin Seligman's work seems relevant here, seeing optimism not just as a personality trait, but almost as a learned habit itself.
Seligman's research is fascinating on this. He found optimism isn't just about feeling good, it's about how you explain things to yourself, your attributional style, how you interpret the causes of good and bad events.
And he argues it could be learned, like a habit.
Yeah, he literally says optimism, like cleanliness or kindness, is a habit. And when you learn it, it becomes fundamental. It becomes rewarding in itself. Optimistic people tend to become successes, he argues, because they explain adversity differently.
How so?
They tend to see setbacks as caused by external factors, not internal flaws. They see them as temporary, not permanent, and specific to that situation, not pervasive across their whole life.
Whereas a pessimist might see a setback as their own fault, permanent and affecting everything.
Exactly. And because optimists frame adversity this way, they bounce back faster. They maintain consistency because they believe their actions can shape the future. They don't see a setback as the final word.
So we're linking habit change directly to these deep internal beliefs, how we evaluate ourselves. How does the system we build actually connect back to that internal identity piece?
Albert Bandura's social learning theory gives us a good mechanism here. He talks about self-evaluation. We judge ourselves feeling satisfied or dissatisfied based on our own internal standards.
Okay, like I should be more disciplined.
Right, but here's the key part Bandura points out. These self-evaluative influences need to be activated. They don't just float around. Something triggers them.
So if my internal standard is, ugh, I always struggle with consistency, then just thinking about starting a new habit activates that negative judgment.
Precisely. It colors your whole self-perception before you even start. But the magic of a good habit system, like the one clear outlines, is that it creates a clear, undeniable external standard.
Like checking off a box.
Exactly. Ticking that box, seeing that streak on your habit tracker, that activates a different self-evaluative influence. It allows you to say, hold on, my internal standard might be, I struggle, but the data says I'm showing up. I'm the kind of person who builds systems, and look, the system is working.
Ah, so the habit provides the evidence to challenge the old belief.
That's what we could call the learner's advantage. Habit design becomes identity validation. If your goal shifts from, I want to write, to, I want to be a writer, the standard changes. It's not, did I write a masterpiece today? It's, did I show up and put words on the page today?
The system focuses on the action, which reinforces the identity.
Yes. The system you build gives you that clear, moment-to-moment, undeniable proof that you are embodying the identity you want. It activates that positive self-evaluation loop. It builds belief through action.
Okay, that sets a strong foundation. Let's get practical. Law 1.
Yeah.
Make it obvious. This seems aimed squarely at that initial hurdle just getting started. It tackles those fuzzy goals we all set.
Yeah, vague goals are killers for habits. Things like, I want to read more, or I need to eat better. They sound good, but they're functionally useless.
Why useless?
Because they don't give your brain a retrieval cue. Our brains are efficiency machines, right? They love shortcuts. If there's no clear signal for when and where to act, the brain just defaults to inertia, the path of least effort, which usually means doing nothing new.
So the solution is specificity. Clear calls these implementation intentions.
Exactly. It's not just about knowing what you want to do. You need to be crystal clear on the when and the where.
Like hyper-specific.
Absolutely precise. The formula he recommends is crucial. After I current habit, I will new habit at time and location. You have to nail it down.
Give me an example.
Okay. After I have my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute at my kitchen table. Or after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes.
Not just, I'll work out after work.
No way! It has to be after I brush my teeth, after I sit down at the table. That level of specificity binds the new, fragile behavior to a really concrete, already established cue. It makes the time and place impossible to ignore.
And this links directly to habit stacking, right? Latching the new habit onto something you already do automatically.
That's the core idea. You leverage the momentum of an existing neural pathway. But the timing of that link, the immediacy, is surprisingly critical.
You mean, I can't just decide, okay, after coffee, sometime in the next hour, I'll meditate. It has to be right after.
Ideally, yes. For the strongest bond, immediacy matters. We can look at this through the lens of classic conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning. The timing of the reinforcement, or in this case, the linking of the cue and the response, is absolutely crucial.
The response has to follow the cue quickly.
almost immediately for the tightest connection. Think about Pavlov's dogs. The bell rings, the food appears, the dog salivates. That association is strong because it's immediate and predictable.
What happens if you delay it? Like bell rings, then nothing for a bit, then food.
Fascinating things happen. There were experiments where they deliberately delayed the reinforcement, the food, sometimes by just 5 or 10 seconds after the conditioned stimulus, the bell.
Only 5 or 10 seconds. That doesn't seem like much.
You wouldn't think so, but the effect was profound. The conditioned response, the dog's anticipation, the salivation, it started to get overridden by what Pavlov called an inhibitory state.
Inhibitory state.
Wait.
Like suppression.
Yeah, almost like the brain shutting down the expectation. The dogs would actually get drowsy. Astonishingly, they'd sometimes even fall asleep right there, over their food dish, while the food was still available.
Fell asleep because the reward was 10 seconds late. Wow. That's inertia taking over powerfully.
It's a striking illustration, isn't it? It shows how quickly that inhibitory state, the brain's default to conserve energy, to rest, can overpower the excitatory process needed for action.
And for us humans, that looks like
Procrastination. I'll do it in a minute. Let me just check my email first. If your cue, say, closing your laptop for the day, isn't immediately followed by the planned action, like putting on your running shoes, your brain very quickly defaults back to inertia. The inhibitory state wins.
So the system demands that prompt connection. Cue, then immediate action before the brain talks you out of it.
Exactly, before that inhibitory state can gain traction and override your good intentions.
Okay, so that dictates how we need to design our environment then. We need to eliminate the friction points and make that cue unavoidable.
Precisely. It comes down to practical environmental design. Some call it field drill advice, but it's simple. Remove friction, add the cue.
So if the habit is working out in the morning,
Remove friction. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Put your water bottle and keys right by the door. Add the cue. Set your alarm. Maybe put your running shoes right where you'll step out of bed.
and for something like creative work.
Prep your workspace. Clear the desk the night before. Open the document you need to work on. Close distracting tabs. Remove friction. Make it effortless to start. Add the cue. Same time, same place every day if possible. This combination, same time, same place, lowest possible friction, creates the most obvious, unavoidable signal for your brain to act.
And it's not just about building good habits, right? This awareness of cues is also key for breaking bad ones.
Yeah.
You mentioned Goleman's work on emotional intelligence here.
Yes, absolutely. When you're dealing with chronic negative patterns like worry or anxiety, the process is kind of inverted, but the principle holds. The very first step to getting control over that cycle is self-awareness.
Catching it early.
Catching the episode early, yes, but also diligently identifying what triggers it. What are the situations, the fleeting thoughts, the images, even the physical sensations that kick off that anxiety spiral?
You can't stop the runaway train unless you know what starts it rolling.
Exactly. If the anxiety cycle always starts when you, say, read a certain type of news headline or see a notification pop up on your phone, you have to identify that specific moment as the cue. This self-monitoring is critical because the bad habit, the worry, the anxiety, is itself a learned response to that initial trigger.
So law one, make it obvious. It's really about installing these clear signposts. Either positive cues telling you go, or recognizing the negative cues telling you danger zone ahead.
Perfectly put. It's about engineering the starting blocks. All right, moving on to law two, make it attractive. This is where we leverage our really deep-seated human desires, things like needing social connection, wanting validation, craving internal consistency. We're fundamentally driven to act in ways that confirm who we believe we are or who we want to be seen as.
And that mention of internal consistency immediately brings cognitive dissonance to mind. Leon Festinger's work. We just hate feeling inconsistent, don't we? It's deeply unattractive psychologically.
We really do. Festinger defined dissonance as that uncomfortable mental state we experience when our beliefs, our attitudes, and our behaviors clash. Like if you believe smoking is bad for you, but you smoke anyway, that creates dissonance.
And we're highly motivated to get rid of that discomfort.
Hugely motivated. It drives enormous behavioral shifts. And one key way we reduce dissonance is through social support. We look to others in our group to confirm our beliefs and choices.
Like finding fellow smokers who also downplay the risks.
Exactly. Being part of a group that shares your beliefs or behaviors adds what Festinger called consonant cognitive elements. It validates your choice, makes it feel more consistent, more acceptable, more attractive.
This drive seems incredibly powerful. The classic example you mentioned is that study of the group predicting the world-ending flood.
Oh, it's the perfect, if slightly bizarre, illustration of just how compelling social attraction is. Festinger and his colleagues infiltrated this small group who fervently believed a massive flood was coming on a specific date, and they believed only they would be saved by aliens landing in a flying saucer.
Okay, pretty out there. So what happened when the date came and went? And no flood, no aliens.
Logically, you'd expect them to abandon their beliefs, right? Face the massive dissonance.
Yeah, you'd think reality would force a change.
But they did the complete opposite. Instead of ditching their beliefs, which would have been psychologically devastating individually, the group members rallied together. They supported each other.
How did they just ignore the facts?
They rationalized the failure. They came up with explanations like maybe their intense devotion had actually prevented the cataclysm and saved the world. And then, get this, they immediately became more fervent. They started actively trying to recruit new members, proselytizing to strangers.
Wow. So the need to maintain the group's belief, the shared identity, was stronger than the undeniable evidence from the real world.
Overwhelmingly stronger. The attractiveness of belonging to that group, of maintaining that shared reality and avoiding individual dissonance trumped everything else.
That's incredible. So the takeaway for habits is, if you want a habit to be attractive, you need to make it part of your social identity. Make it feel like something people like us do.
Precisely. And this drive for consistency also dictates how we handle information. Think back to the smoker example. If you're a smoker and you anticipate that reading a new, scary health report will increase your dissonance, make you feel guilty or anxious, Festinger found you're highly likely to just avoid that information.
Stick your head in the sand.
Basically, yes. Conversely, if you expect information to reduce dissonance, maybe a dubious article suggesting moderate smoking isn't that bad, you'll actively seek it out.
So making a good habit attractive involves aligning it so closely with your desired identity that not doing it would actually cause that uncomfortable dissonance.
Exactly. While doing the habit provides a satisfying rush of consistency, it feels right, it confirms this is who I am, the habit becomes an attractive necessity for maintaining that self-concept.
And we see this pull of social roles, even in areas like dating advice, sometimes in ways that aren't necessarily healthy long-term.
Yeah.
You brought up Levine and Heller's work on attachment styles.
Yeah, it's a really interesting example of conforming to a perceived attractive role. Think about common dating advice like, play it cool, don't seem too eager, act a bit mysterious.
Right, the whole treat 'em mean, keep 'em keen idea.
Well, that advice is often framed as universally effective for attraction. But the psychological reality, according to attachment theory, is that this kind of behavior, feigning disinterest or unavailability, tends to make you specifically attractive to one type of partner,
Which type?
an avoidant partner, someone who is themselves uncomfortable with too much closeness or emotional intimacy.
Because acting aloof allows the avoidant person to maintain their preferred emotional distance without feeling pressured.
Precisely. It lets them control the closeness. The key point here for our discussion isn't the dating outcome itself, but the power of conforming to what's perceived as an attractive social script. Performing the mysterious role, even if it goes against your genuine need for connection, can feel immediately attractive because it achieves a certain kind of social validation or perceived status. It confirms you know how to play the game.
That really underscores the idea that if a habit is positioned as necessary for belonging to a group you admire, it instantly becomes more attractive, even if the habit itself is difficult.
Absolutely. And that's where culture and defining group values become so important. Angela Duckworth talks about this in her work on grit, studying high-performing organizations.
Like elite sports teams or military units.
Exactly. She found they often create what she calls a competitive cauldron, a culture with really high standards. For instance, she looked at the legendary UNC women's soccer coach, Anson Dorrance. He established 12 non-negotiable core values for his team.
12? What were they like?
About half were focused on teamwork and selflessness, and the other half were purely about grit things, like embracing hardship, demanding effort.
So laying out those values acts like a filter, doesn't it? It defines what it takes to belong.
It does. It makes the incredibly demanding behaviors, the intense training, the relentless perseverance attractive. Why? Because demonstrating those behaviors is the price of admission to that elite group. The habit, like showing up every day with maximum effort, becomes attractive because it's integral to that high-status identity you want. It says, I belong here. Okay, so we've made the cue obvious, we've made the desire attractive. Now we hit law 3, which is the crucial pivot from wanting to doing. Make it easy.
This feels very intuitive. Claire talks about the law of least effort. We're just naturally wired to take the easiest path, right?
Absolutely. It's an evolutionary efficiency principle. Conserve energy whenever possible. Great for survival back in the day, but often disastrous for building new, effortful habits in the modern world. Our default is lazy, basically.
So how do we counteract that default laziness when it comes to habits? Clear's big practical tool here is the 2-minute rule.
Yes, the 2-minute rule is brilliant because it directly targets the start of the habit. It doesn't worry about the duration or the quality initially. The goal is simply to begin.
Just lower the barrier to entry as much as humanly possible.
Exactly. Shrink the habit down to something that takes 2 minutes or less. If your goal is read every day, the 2-minute version is read 1 page. If it's do yoga, the 2-minute version is take out my yoga mat.
Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes.
Precisely. The key insight is that the resistance, the friction, is almost always highest right at the very beginning. Getting started is the hardest part. The 2-minute rule makes starting ridiculously easy.
And the idea is momentum, right? Once you've started, it's easier to keep going.
Often, yes. But even if you don't, even if you just do the 2 minutes, you've still cast a vote for your new identity. You've reinforced the habit. As Clear says, you should walk slowly but never backward. The point isn't immediate massive results. The point is showing up. Repetition.
Making the start easy ensures you get those repetitions in.
And repetition is the engine that actually makes the habit easier over time neurologically. But it also requires looking outside ourselves at the friction in our environment. Dan Ariely's work in behavioral economics has some great examples of this.
Like the Honda maintenance story.
Yeah, that's a perfect illustration of reducing friction. Honda had this problem. People weren't bringing their cars in for regular maintenance nearly often enough. They were procrastinating.
Why? Too complicated.
Massively. Ariely points out there were something like 18,000 potential service items, fluids, checks, replacements. Trying to figure out what needed doing when created huge cognitive friction. It was overwhelming for the average car owner.
Decision paralysis. So what did Honda do?
Their engineers did something genius. They essentially threw out the complex, hyper-optimized schedule and consolidated everything down into just 3 simple, standardized service events. Service 1, Service 2, Service 3.
Like ordering a value meal at McDonald's, as Ariely put it.
Exactly. It removed the need to think. You just booked Service 1 or 2 or 3 when the reminder came up. It drastically lowered the cognitive load, the friction.
And the insight wasn't about perfect maintenance anymore.
No, the key realization was profound. It is far, far better to have people service their cars reasonably well at simple, maybe slightly compromised intervals than to have them not service their cars at all because the perfect system was too damn complicated.
Wow. That perfectly captures make it easy. Optimize for consistency and ease, not for theoretical perfection that never happened.
And it avoids that internal battle, that cost of making a difficult choice, which ties into the paradox of choice.
Barry Schwartz's work. The idea that having too many options can actually make us less happy. How does that connect to making a habit easy?
Schwartz draws this great distinction between maximizers and satisficers. Maximizers are people who always need to make the absolute best possible choice. They research endlessly, compare everything.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. And Schwartz found it's associated with lower happiness, lower self-esteem, and way more regret. Why? Because they're constantly tormented by the fear they missed out on an even better option among all the ones they considered.
While satisficers just pick something good enough and move on.
Right. They have their criteria, find something that meets them, and they're content. They don't torture themselves with infinite comparisons.
So in the context of habits, being a maximizer means getting bogged down.
Totally. You spend weeks researching the perfect workout plan, the ideal meditation cushion, the optimal time to write, and you never actually start the habit because you're paralyzed by the quest for perfection.
Whereas making it easy, like the 2-minute rule, is inherently about satisficing. Just start with good enough.
Exactly. And Schwartz also points out that decision conflict, especially involving trade-offs like choosing between exercising or relaxing, triggers loss aversion. Whichever you choose, you feel the loss of the option you didn't pick.
Making the chosen activity feel less good.
Right. So, to make habits easy, you need to minimize that internal conflict, that feeling of loss. The 2-minute rule does this brilliantly. The choice becomes ridiculously simple. Do the 2-minute version or do nothing. The psychological cost of choosing the habit becomes almost zero.
And then, that simple repeated action starts to physically change the brain. making it genuinely easier over time.
Yeah.
You mentioned Ebbinghaus.
Hermann Ebbinghaus, yeah.
Yeah.
His classic work on memory back in the 19th century.
Yeah.
He demonstrated very clearly that retention, how well we remember something, is a direct function of repetition.
The more you repeat, the better you remember. Seems obvious.
It does, but he quantified it. He memorized lists of nonsense syllables. He found that increasing the number of times he repeated a list on day one resulted in a proportional saving in the amount of effort needed to relearn that same list 24 hours later.
So each repetition literally reduces the work required next time.
Precisely. It's neurological. Every time you perform that easy 2-minute version of your habit, you are physically strengthening the neural pathway associated with it. You are actively decreasing the amount of cognitive and physical effort required the next time you do it.
Ease compounds itself through repetition.
Beautifully put. By focusing relentlessly on making the start easy, ensuring those repetitions happen, you guarantee that the perceived and actual effort of the habit shrinks over time. It becomes automatic, effortless, easy.
Okay, we've made it obvious, attractive, and easy. The final piece of the puzzle is Law 4. Make it satisfying. This tackles a core problem with many good habits, doesn't it? Like saving money or eating healthy. The real payoff is often delayed.
Hugely delayed sometimes. While the effort or the sacrifice is immediate, our brains aren't really wired for that. We crave immediate gratification. So Law 4 is about engineering immediate satisfaction into the process.
Finding a way to reward yourself now for the behavior you want to repeat.
Exactly. Clear emphasizes that one of the most deeply satisfying human feelings is the feeling of making progress. If you can tap into that, give yourself a little hit of, I'm moving forward. Right after doing the habit, you complete the habit loop, you lock in the behavior.
And the classic, simplest tool for this is the habit tracker, the good old X on the calendar.
It sounds almost trivial, but that X is incredibly potent psychologically. Why? First, it provides clear, unambiguous visual evidence that you did the thing. You showed up, progress.
Removes any doubt or fuzziness.
Right. But maybe more importantly, the physical act of marking that X delivers a tiny, immediate dopamine hit. A little jolt of pleasure. It's a micro reward for a job well done.
I did it. I earned this X.
Precisely. You get to feel that satisfaction right now. And it reinforces the idea. Clear pushes. Don't break the chain. That visual chain of X's becomes its own motivation. The reward is manufactured, yes, but it's immediate and visible. It successfully bridges that gap between the effort today and the big reward way down the line.
And thinking back to Festinger and cognitive dissonance, this act of marking the X isn't just passive record-keeping, is it? It actively reinforces the choice psychologically.
Oh, absolutely. It feeds right back into that need for consistency. Remember how we reduce dissonance by changing our perceptions? One key strategy after making a choice is to actively boost the perceived attractiveness of the option you chose and simultaneously downgrade the attractiveness of the options you rejected.
So if I choose the 2-minute run and mark my X,
Your brain doesn't just passively note it. It immediately starts working to convince itself that was an excellent choice. Wow, that run felt good. Much better than sitting on the couch would have felt. I'm so glad I did that. I'm really becoming a runner.
the X provides the justification for that internal PR campaign.
It does. It gives your brain the evidence it needs to engage in that positive rationalization. The satisfaction becomes an active psychological process that strengthens the commitment to the habit. If you break the chain, if there's no X to mark, that rationalization machine kind of stalls. There's nothing to reinforce.
That's really interesting. The satisfaction isn't just the feeling. It's the brain actively making the choice feel more satisfying after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
We should also touch on the satisfaction of action versus the dissatisfaction of inaction, especially long-term. Barry Schwartz's work on regret comes up again here.
Yes, the omission bias reversal. It's a fascinating finding about regret. In the short term, people tend to regret actions they took that turned out badly, things they did, acts of commission. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I regret buying that.
Makes sense. The negative consequence is fresh.
Right. But Schwartz points out that in the long run, when people look back on their lives as a whole, the pattern flips. Overwhelmingly, people tend to regret the things they didn't do, the failures to act, the chances not taken, acts of omission.
I wish I'd traveled more. I regret not pursuing that passion. I wish I'd taken better care of my health.
Exactly. Those omissions tend to haunt us more deeply over time. So the connection to Law 4 is powerful. The immediate satisfaction you manufacture now with your habit tracker, with acknowledging your progress, is compounding. You're not just getting a little dopamine hit, you're actively building a defense against that profound, long-term regret of inaction.
Each X is like an investment against future I wish I had. feelings.
It's visible proof you are acting. You are avoiding that future regret. That in itself can be incredibly satisfying if you frame it that way.
Well, let's be real. Life happens. Streaks get broken. The chain will break eventually. How does the system, and law of force specifically, handle failure? Because failure usually feels the opposite of satisfying. It often leads to shame and giving up.
This is where self-compassion becomes absolutely essential. It's the protective layer for making habits satisfying long-term, even through setbacks. Dr. Kristen Neff's work is key here. She distinguishes shame from guilt. Guilt is, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad or I am a mistake.
And shame is toxic for habits.
Absolutely. If missing one workout triggers the shame belief, see, I knew I couldn't stick with it, I'm just lazy and undisciplined, then you're likely to just abandon the whole system. Why bother if you've already proven you're a failure?
So if I miss Tuesday, shame says, you failed, game over.
Right. But self-compassion is the direct antidote. Neff identifies 3 core components. First, mindfulness. Acknowledging the slip-up without over-identifying with it. Okay, I missed my workout today. Not, I am a complete failure.
Psychic.
Common humanity. Recognizing that everyone struggles, everyone misses habits sometimes. You're not uniquely flawed or alone in this. It connects you to others instead of isolating you in shame.
Yeah,
Self-kindness. Treating yourself with the same understanding and encouragement you'd offer a friend who slipped up. Avoiding harsh self-criticism. Allowing yourself to feel worthy, even with imperfections.
So self-compassion breaks that shame spiral.
Exactly. It allows you to see the missed day clearly, acknowledge it without letting it define you, and crucially motivates you to get back on track. It shifts the motivation from avoiding shame, which is brittle, to pursuing self-improvement, which is resilient.
So instead of beating yourself up, you say, okay, that happened. What's the plan for tomorrow?
Precisely. Self-compassion makes it possible to find satisfaction not just in the perfect streak, but also in the act of returning to the habit after a miss. It protects the integrity of the system, ensures the self-evaluation stays positive overall, and keeps the habit loop going even when life isn't perfect. It makes the process satisfying, not just the outcome.
So pulling this all together, we've explored how these tiny changes, structured through the 4 laws, can lead to really remarkable results. It's not about heroic effort or bursts of willpower.
No, it's about engineering a system rooted in some pretty fundamental psychology. We learned we need to make the cue obvious, using specific implementation intentions, maybe habit stacking, to overcome that default inertia, that inhibitory state.
Then we have to make it attractive, tapping into our desire for social belonging, for cognitive consistency, making the habit feel like a confirmation of our desired identity, so not doing it feels wrong.
Then, crucially, make it easy. Embracing the law of least effort with things like the 2-minute rule, reducing friction relentlessly, minimizing that decision conflict so repetition can build momentum and make the habit automatic over time.
And finally, make it satisfying. Engineering immediate rewards, like using a habit tracker to close that feedback loop, using psychological reinforcement to boost the perceived value of our actions, and layering in self-compassion to protect the system from the inevitable setbacks and shame spirals.
It really is like designing your own personal operating system for behavior change. The whole point is to stop white-knuckling it with motivation and start leveraging these deeper, subconscious, conditioned processes that are running the show anyway.
It's a powerful framework. And maybe to leave our listeners with one final thought, something that digs even deeper. Let's think about transactional analysis for a second. Eric Berne's idea of the parent, adult, and child ego states within us.
Right. Byrne suggested these states are based on our early experiences. The child state, in particular, often holds on to old emotional scripts, sometimes rooted in that early feeling of, I'm not okay, you're okay. That feeling of being small, helpless, maybe judged.
And often when we face challenges now, like the friction of starting a new habits or the shame of failing or feeling overwhelmed by choices, these situations can hook that child state. We emotionally regress, reacting with old, unhelpful patterns.
Procrastination, self-criticism, avoidance, the old behavioral scripts kick in, driven by those old child feelings.
But the functional system we've been talking about, the one built on the 4 laws, seemed designed to operate from the adult state, the rational, present-focused, data-driven part of us.
It relies on planning, adult. Observing data, like the habit tracker, adult. Making logical adjustments, adult.
So here's the provocative question. If the 4 laws of behavior change are essentially the tools for systematically engineering a more reliable, functional adult state by creating predictable cues, demanding consistent data, the X, enforcing systems of self-acceptance like self-compassion.
Could mastering these laws actually serve as a form of practical self-reparenting? A way to consciously rewrite those habitual, often self-defeating scripts of the child state that so often derail our best intentions for long-term change?
Can behavioral design, applied consistently, fundamentally alter not just our habits, but the deeper patterns of our identity rooted in those early experiences?
That's a powerful thought to consider how structuring our actions might reshape our core sense of self. Something to chew on. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Catch you next time.